Well, I want to start out today with a quote from this guy, Charles Darwin, Mr. Evolution himself, who once said, "It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is the most adaptable to change." And if I might be so bold as to add something to that profound statement, it's the one who is most adaptable to change who survives and who ultimately thrives. We don't just want to survive, ultimately we want to thrive. Now, don't get me wrong, surviving is a wonderful, wonderful thing. It sure beats the alternative when you think about it. But it's not enough by itself. Have you ever watched one of those wilderness reality survival shows on TV? There have been like a couple, 3 of them, I think. Survivor Man, and I think the most recent one is called Naked and Afraid, where they take a couple and they deposit them in some hostile environment someplace. No food, no water, and the new twist is no clothes. I mean, at least in the other ones, the guys got to, wear their clothes and stuff like that. But, they get dropped in a hostile environment. They have to rely on their wits. And they usually end up coming out of it sunburned, filthy, exhausted, starving, because they're eating tree bark, right? And insects. And the one thing I can guarantee when they come out of these situations, the one thing you never ever hear them say is, "Boy, was that fun. How soon can we do it again? And could you please make the weather just a little bit hotter? Or could you put us in a place with even more alligators and more snakes and maybe a few more mosquitoes?" They never say that. Surviving is good, but we don't want to be in constant survival mode. It's a stressful and unhealthy way to live. On the other hand, do we always feel as if we are thriving? The dictionary definition of thrive is to grow vigorously, to flourish, to do well. Do we honestly feel like we're thriving in all the areas of our lives all of the time? Areas like health, finances, spirituality, our relationships, our emotional and psychological well-being, and even just plain happiness. On a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 represents bare survival and 10 represents total thrivitude, or whatever you want to call it, are we ever always at 8 to 10, say, in every area? Honestly. And what if we find that in some areas, or maybe sometimes all areas, we're at 5 or less? Could that lead to some metaphysical malpractice? You know what that is, don't you? Metaphysical malpractice is self-inflicted worry, guilt, shame, which comes from this thought, "Oh my God, I must not be doing it right. I'm not spiritual enough. What was it in my consciousness that drew this to me so that I'm not thriving, I'm just surviving? I'm not praying, I'm not meditating enough," right? All of those things, that's metaphysical malpractice. And as I was contemplating that, I was thinking about a fellow named Greg Tamblyn. Some of you might recall last year at this time we had a guest speaker and musician by the name of Greg Tamblyn, he's a very talented singer and songwriter, also a very funny comedian, and he wrote a song about what happened to him when he got writer's block a few years back and he couldn't come up with any new songs or any new material. In other words, he found himself in a situation where he wasn't thriving, and then he goes ahead and commits a little metaphysical malpractice on himself. So I want to play this song for you. Let's sit back and listen. Go ahead, Russ.
My mom told me when I was a little kid that I was a serious little kid, you know. And she's right, I used to worry about a lot of stuff. And it's a quality I've kind of retained into adulthood. I'm still a worrier, but I've gotten much better at it. Much more efficient worrier now. I do it in less time, get it over with. At some point last year I was kind of worrying about not writing any songs, and this is what happened. I was worried about not writing any songs. No words, no tunes, nothing for way too long. I was worried I'd never write again. Maybe there was no more ink in my pen. And I thought about that, and I began to feel ashamed. I was ashamed that I'd been worried about not writing. I've been through droughts before and come out fighting. Seemed like my worry was out of control. I was ashamed about it down to my soul. Then it hit me what I was doing, and I started feeling guilty. I was guilty that I could let myself feel shame over something so insignificant as this writing game. I thought I'd released that stuff long ago. Felt guilty that I had such a long way to go. Then I realized what I was doing, and I got embarrassed. I was embarrassed that my shame could make me feel guilty. All these negative thought patterns, man, it was silly. If someone could see inside my head, they'd give me a drug and put me to bed. Yeah, I was embarrassed, and that made me mad. I was angry that I could be so immature. I was angry at me. I was down on myself for sure. And as my anger turned into resentment, I thought about what the long-term effects of that meant, and I realized what I was doing to my body, and I began to feel afraid. I was afraid of what I was doing to myself. All these negative emotions affecting my health. Body and mind are so interconnected. My shame, guilt, worry, and fear were making me infected, and I was afraid that I was becoming depressed. And as I began to sink into depression, the effect on my body and mind became an obsession. The outcome of this could not be in doubt, and that gave me something new to worry about. I knew that I might not be around for too long, so I wrote it all down and I had a new song. And when I thought about that, I was fine again.
Oh gosh, isn't that wild? And could you relate? Isn't it strange how when we somehow don't measure up to some vision that we have for ourselves, we get into this negative feedback loop, and one thought feeds on another, and it's just this downward spiral. And he writes it all down, and he had a new song, and when he thought about that, he was fine. What was the secret, do you think? Yeah, it's no secret, really, because he finally recognized that his biggest problem wasn't the writer's block, it was what he was thinking about his situation that was causing the worry, the stress, the madness, the anxiety, so on and so forth. Life doesn't always cooperate and behave according to our plans. We may have a vision about what thriving looks like for us, but what happens when the vision doesn't match reality? We may not be able to control what reality throws at us, but we can always control how we experience it, what we think about it, and how we let it affect us. Sometimes, in the face of reality that doesn't match our plans, we have to learn how to just abide. It's kind of an archaic word. It means this simply: to wait patiently for something, or to endure without yielding, or accept without objection. I love in the song how Greg became an observer of his own feelings. No suppression, no denial. This is where I'm at. I feel worried, embarrassed, shame, anger, whatever it was it happened to be. Wasn't pleasant, but he kept his eyes open. He acknowledged the reality, and guess what? He got through it because he learned how to abide with reality, whatever that happened to be for him. One of my favorite Unity authors in the post-Fillmore era is Eric Butterworth. He was a Unity minister who led the church in New York City for most of his life, and he was also a best-selling author. He's best known for his book, Discover the Power Within You, but he also wrote lots of other books, and one of them that is still on my bookshelf that I take down regularly is called In the Flow of Life. And here's one of my favorite quotes from the book. Eric says, "Life is a flowing experience, and the only certainty is change. In fear and in greed, in joy and in sadness, there's a human tendency to hold on. When life is equated with things or with relationships or with moments of fulfillment, the threat of their loss or change is too much to endure. Thus, the discovery of the flow of life is the greatest awakening of consciousness we can ever achieve." And in addition to being a great writer, Eric was also a musician and an artist. And while he was writing this book, In the Flow, there was an image that came to him. And so he sat down and he drew it out, and it became his logo. Here's what it looks like. Now, notice anything up here on the platform that looks similar? Now, is Kathleen in here? I think she's setting up in the other room. Kathleen DeMontenay designed this for us, and I'm not sure if she had Eric Butterworth in mind or In the Flow in mind when she created this. But when I saw this for the first time, this was immediately what came to mind, was Eric Butterworth's logo, In the Flow. And this is how Eric interprets this logo. He says that the figure there at the very, you can leave it up there, Russ. The figure at the very center represents us, you, me, the individual. And then, if you look at those arrows that are flowing into it, they represent the universal flow of life, of love, of substance, of inspiration. And he also says to note carefully that there are small arrows in the very center that are pointing back outward. So the flow pours into us and flows again back outwards. It's this universal flow of God that no person and no thing can be outside of. That's the point here. And Eric, in turn, some of you may be familiar with a Greek philosopher by the name of Plotinus. He admits that he got the idea from this philosopher Plotinus here, who said, "The whole universe comes rushing, streaming, and pouring into me from all sides while I stand quiet." And so from that image and all of those ideas came that wonderful logo. So here's the logo again, showing us the whole universe rushing, streaming, and pouring in from all sides while I stand quiet, while I simply abide. Don't have to do anything. Don't have to go anywhere. Just be still, abide, know the truth. Eric's favorite definition of God fits in with this perfectly. His favorite definition of God is this one. He says, God is a sphere, the center of which is everywhere, and the circumference of which is nowhere. Sit with that one for a while. That's one of those brain benders, right? I mean, it's not a picture that can be drawn, and yet I think we intuitively know what it means. He uses this, by the way, as a tool to draw the mind away from the tendency to see God as an anthropomorphic being out there someplace. He uses this description as a tool to draw us away from our tendency to try to take our concepts of God and set them in concrete and then never let go of them. And that's something that can keep us out of the flow. A sphere with a center that's everywhere means that it has to be right here where I am right now, and right there where each of you are right now. So when reality doesn't match up to our vision of what it means to thrive, we may be tempted to think that we're out of the flow, but that's impossible. The center is where each of us are right now. So that means that we can take some comfort in knowing that the flow abides right where we are, right at this very moment. It's there for us. It's moving in us and through us all the time. But whether or not we let it permeate and do its work is another matter. And of course, it all gets back to consciousness. What is it that fills our awareness? And we control that. Are we filling our awareness with our own opinions and judgments about what's happening to us and around us? Or can we just let go of that stuff and abide? Rest in the flow until things are back in sync again. Can we learn how to abide just as the flow abides? Eric assures us that we can. He assures us that we can learn how to wait patiently, how to endure without yielding and accept without having to impose our opinions and conditions on reality. Chapter 7 of his book is called Life Comes to Pass. And he got the idea for that title when he was reading a Bible passage that started with the words, "It came to pass." This is a phrase that's repeated dozens of times in different stories in the Bible. It came to pass. And out of that experience, Eric came up with an affirmation that he uses in the face of challenging times, especially those times when reality seems to be thrashing our vision of what it means to thrive. This is what he says. I meet this circumstance in complete confidence that the flow of spirit within me is greater than what I see in the world. I do not deny the reality of what is happening, but I deny its permanence. I know that this too shall pass. So I've given you a copy of that in the handout in your bulletin that you can take with you. And an even shorter way to capture the essence of that is to simply affirm that I do not deny the reality of what is happening, but I deny its permanence. And after that, we remember what it means to be in the flow. Each one of us is the focal point of creative consciousness that formed this immense and infinite universe. Think about that. The creative force makes up every tiny bit of what we are. It expresses through us. And so instead of thinking that we have to look outside ourselves for power, for fulfillment, for peace, whatever it is we think we need, we can start from the idea that we already have what it is that we need. Even in our relative existence, we share in that absolute that we call consciousness, the flow of life, the universal flow. One last word from Eric. He says, great is the delusion that I will be happy when, fill in the blank, whatever that happens to be. Great is the delusion that I will be happy when. There is no true happiness and accomplishment other than the fleeting moment of exhilaration. Tomorrow, we have to find the vision to meet a new day. Happiness comes when one knows that they are in the flow of life and of the guidance to live it fully and well. May your lives go well. See you next week.